I'm standing in front of the Simón Bolívar statue here in Washington, D.C., a gift from Venezuela in 1955. It was meant to represent independence, self-determination, and pride in a nation that once stood tall in Latin America. That's what makes this moment so stark. While Bolivar symbolizes freedom, Nicolás Maduro now sits in New York, facing justice after more than a decade in power that left Venezuela economically shattered and politically broken. Under Nicolás Maduro, Venezuela didn't just decline, it was systematically stripped. Maduro ruled for more than a decade, tightening control year after year. Security forces were used to crush protests. Opposition leaders were jailed, banned, or driven into exile. Elections were repeatedly disputed and widely rejected internationally, yet the regime stayed in place through force, fear, and manipulation. The damage reached every corner of daily life. Entire cities went dark for days during nationwide blackouts. Hospitals operated without power. Food shortages became routine. Inflation exploded so violently that people were paid in stacks of bills worth less than the paper they were printed on. A middle class that once traveled, invested, and built businesses was erased almost overnight. Tourism collapsed. Foreign businesses pulled out. Hotels shut their doors. Air routes disappeared. A country once known for its beaches, mountains, nightlife, and culture became a place people were afraid to enter and desperate to escape. Millions fled on foot, by bus, by boat, not because they wanted to leave, but because staying meant hunger, fear, or worse. One reason Maduro managed to stay in power for so long was how he presented himself. In public, he danced, he joked, he sang on television, he tried to appear approachable, even charming, like a man of the people. And yes, he still has a small but loud, loyal following that buys into that image. But that image was deeply misleading. Behind the performances was a leader who proved to be cunning and corrupt, who said one thing and did another. His words couldn't be trusted. His promises never materialized. His decisions consistently served himself and his inner circle, not the country. While he danced on stage, people stood in food lines. While he joked on TV, hospitals ran without power. While he sang, millions of Venezuelans fled their homes. Charisma became a cover. Populism became a shield. For too long, the act distracted from the reality. A government that hollowed out institutions, crushed dissent, tolerated corruption, and showed little real concern for the suffering of its own people. That contrast between the performance and the pain is why so many Venezuelans ultimately rejected him. The smile was loud, but the damage was louder. Layered on top of that collapse were serious international accusations that Maduro's inner circle allowed drug trafficking routes to operate through Venezuela, turning the country into a corridor for narcotics headed to the US and global markets, profiting while the population suffered. Those allegations are now part of why this moment matters legally, not just politically. This wasn't just corruption, it was state decay. Now comes the pivot, and the stakes couldn't be higher. If stabilization holds, Venezuela has real upside. Not overnight, but real. Restarting oil production brings jobs. Keeping the power on brings businesses back. Restoring security brings airlines, tourists, and capital. Real estate today is deeply undervalued, not because the country lacks beauty or resources, but because risk crushed prices. As stability returns, development follows. Housing, hotels, logistics, retail, energy services. Tourism doesn't come back first. Safety does. Then flights, then investors, then visitors. Foreigners won't rush in tomorrow. But with sustained security and clear rules, Venezuela could reopen in stages over the next few years, not decades. Standing here in front of a statue gifted in 1955, the contrast is overwhelming. Venezuela once symbolized independence and promise. It lost that to corruption, authoritarianism, and stolen elections. The question now isn't whether the damage was real. It was. The question is whether this moment becomes a reset. Because if Venezuela is rebuilt correctly, this won't just be the end of a bad chapter. It could mark the beginning of one of the most significant recoveries in the region. And this time, the future belongs to the people, not the strongmen who took it from them.